Welcome everyone to Monday Morning Morons for September 25th, 2017. Well, as you can see, the world did not come to an end on Saturday, so it looks like we're going to have to deal with these lunatics and snowflakes for a while longer. That's a bummer, I know. Anyway, this week, let's begin with some faux outrage brought on by a word.
I'm a First Amendment absolutist. I believe in only two things completely, the First Amendment and boobs. And so once they made the decision that they were not going to allow a conservative, non-sports-related commentary, they couldn't do it either.
Hold on. I just want to make sure I heard you correctly as a woman anchoring the show. Did you say, what did you just say? You believe in the First Amendment and BWBS?
Okay, I'm not going to play the rest because apparently Clay's opinion about the subject at hand, you know, the reason he was invited to this interview in the first place, is no longer relevant. He said, boobs. That's all that matters now. Matters so much, in fact, that not only did Brooke Baldwin make him repeat it several times, because apparently she's hard of hearing, but it's so important that the next day, poor emotionally scarred Brooke had to write an opinion piece all about the shock and horror she experienced to remind us all how victimized she really was by this single word. Let's have a look. Let's just skip the first part here. She's just setting up the scene for us, and we just watched it anyway, so we already know what happened. I believe in the First Amendment and boobs. Side note, I've been a journalist for 17 years. The past 7 spent at CNN hosting a live show. I've seen and heard some things. But when I first heard boobs from a grown man on national television in 2017... my initial thought bubble was, did I hear that correctly? There's no way he just came on my show and said what I think he said, did he? And I let it hang. My executive producer Eric, who has worked with me for years, knows me, read my face, and quickly got in my ear from the control room and asked, did he say booze? Apparently my producers behind the scenes were all scrambling, trying to figure out the same thing. What did he just say? I just couldn't let this go. And therein lies the problem, if you ask me. You couldn't let it go. The man said a word that apparently you don't like. You took offense. He didn't give any. And for a 17-year veteran journalist to be so riled up about a single word, well, it is indeed 2017. So I jumped back in and spelled it out like a 4th grade boy. B-O-O-B-S? Anyone else notice the subtle sexism there? Kind of ironic, don't you think, Brooke? What exactly does a 4th grade boy spell like? Why did you feel it necessary to mention boy at all? Couldn't have just been a 12-year-old or a 4th grader or a kid? Had to be a 4th grade boy, didn't it? See, I can play this perpetually offended game too. I simply choose not to because whining about insignificant shit seems rather pointless to me. Yes, boobs. He eventually confirmed. Boobs. Almost proud, smirking. I quickly felt myself turning red, getting irritated and angry. My mind was racing. My face, I could tell, was incredulous. In the thick of it all, I could see my other guest, Keith Reed, was equally aghast. Yeah, well, that's because your other guest is a cuck. He's not actually offended by that word. He's only pretending to be offended because he thinks he should be to make you happy. He's kissing your ass like a good little lapdog because he wants his biscuit. Let's just skip to your point, shall we? The thing is, this is not okay. Speaking to women like this is unacceptable. It is 2017. Why is this even happening? I've spent much of my year, when you don't see me every day from 2 to 4 on CNN, interviewing women. It's a passion project of mine called American Women, with leading ladies you'll recognize. An idea born out of my covering the 2016 presidential campaign and the aftermath. Oh, cut the shit, Brooke. It's an assignment from your network because, despite their lagging viewership, they still haven't figured out that people don't want to hear this identity politics bullshit. Talking to young women, seeing firsthand how so many of them feel empowered and with a desire to be heard and get involved. I want to help lift women's voices, and I realize in doing that I need to use my own. As for my guest today, despite what he's tweeting, he won't be coming back on my show. Ever. He works at Fox Sports Radio. Maybe he should learn from folks over at Fox News. Being demeaning to women does have consequences. Okay, let's get this straight, shall we? First, yet again, it is the current year. Thanks for the reminder, we might have forgotten. Second, let's remember here, he wasn't talking to you about boobs. He merely mentioned the word in a somewhat juvenile joke. Not even an original joke, frankly. I've heard numerous different spins on the same joke. It's pretty common. Point is, boobs were not the point of the discussion until you made it the point of the discussion. You could have chosen to focus on the rest of his statements, which were regarding the subject you invited him on to speak about, but you chose not to. Third, it's not okay to even mention that word in the presence of a woman because it's somehow demeaning for them to even hear it. Protecting them from hearing it is how we make them feel empowered. Maybe it's just me, but that sounds an awful lot like you think women are too fragile to handle certain words. That certainly doesn't sound empowering to me. Let's move on before the strong, independent Brooke comes to my castle waving crucifixes around for saying boobs too many times. Are man caves sexist? Jesus Christ. Really? I can already tell this is going to be one of those articles that makes me wish I could die. Man grenade, alternatives to bath bombs, bros wine, and man-sized tissues. There are plenty of things that prove masculinity is oh so fragile. But teetering at the top of this pile of useless gendered nonsense is the man cave. Hold on, did you just make that shit up or am I out of the loop? Because I've never heard of any of those terms. And by the way, masculinity is oh so fragile. Really? Right after you say, when suicide kills more young men than anything else, we should encourage them to open up, not express themselves behind closed doors. So, guys, open up more so we can make fun of you for being fragile little cunts. Gee, I wonder why that campaign isn't working. To have a man cave is to truly live in the 1950s, when women ruled the roost and men were Neanderthals who needed to hide their belongings away in a room where they can cast aside the burden of being civilized. They are painted as havens where men can fart and drink beer really fast and swear and do whatever else it is that men stereotypically do. Sure, men and women don't have to, and almost certainly shouldn't, hang out all the time, but isn't an entire cave in which to assert your masculinity a little much? Even men's magazines like GQ have rejected the archaic idea. As if I give a shit what GQ thinks. But you really can't be this fucking stupid, can you? An entire cave? Jesus. It's a name, woman. Just a name. It's not an actual cave, you thick-headed moron. And no, a single space to ourselves is not a little much. Even the most social people like to have a refuge. A place where they can escape the world, drop their masks, and just be themselves. For some, it's a room. For some, it's a basement. For some, it's a garage. For some, it's a dedicated space. For most of us, it's a temporary space, like the bathroom. You know, like when you decide to light your scented candles, slip into a hot tub, and monopolize the bathroom for 3 hours to relax. Well, the rest of us do the same kind of thing. We just don't take up the busiest room in the house when we do it. Besides, what exactly is a man cave anyway? Man caves have no real definition, as they have sort of come to life in popular media and popular imagination, says Tristan Bridges, Assistant Professor, Department of Sociology, University of California, Santa Barbara, who has studied and visited numerous man caves. She studied man caves? Studied them? Well, I can't think of anything more productive to do with your time. Tristan agrees that man caves support gender inequality in the home. These spaces often play on the cultural notion that men can't really be themselves when women are around. We can't. Ask Brooke Baldwin. The idea that men need their own space, separate and away from everyone else, is a privileged position. And even when couples I've interviewed use the term tongue-in-cheek, I still think the spaces support inequitable relationships between women and men. Okay, I'm calling bullshit on this professor. No way you studied man caves and still came to this conclusion unless that's the conclusion you wanted to come to in the first place. For starters, man caves aren't exclusive man-only spaces where we post guards and lock doors to keep women out. Those are the patriarchy dens where we have our monthly meetings to discuss how best to oppress women and take away their rights, so you're getting the two mixed up. Man caves are generally just a room or some other space where men set up the stuff they need for their hobbies, or place a big-ass TV so they can watch football games, maybe a card table where they can hustle a few bucks out of their buddies on a Friday night, or maybe the garage where we keep our tools and tinker with machines, shit like that. Wives and girlfriends are more than welcome to use these spaces as well, yet unless they share the same hobby, are quite unlikely to bother doing so. We aren't barring you from it. You're choosing not to use it. The reality is, in most American households, women rule the fucking roost, and they know it. A man cave only happens if she allows it to happen, so if you don't like it, talk to women. Get them on your side, and man caves will disappear faster than your intelligence. No, fuck it. That's it. I can't take any more of this one. She's an idiot. The professor she's listening to as an expert is an idiot. The one guy she bothered to talk to tells her essentially the same thing I just did, but she dismissed it because her idiotic professor says otherwise. Well, call me crazy, but who do you think knows more about man caves? A man who happened to write a book about them, or a woman who visited a few and called it studying? Give me the next one, Bob. These white people will respond to your racist trolls so you don't have to. A volunteer-run Facebook group answers ignorant comments online at the request of people of color. This is a joke, right? Oh, they're serious. If you're a person of color exhausted by having to explain over and over on social media why all lives aren't treated the same by police, or why producer Issa Rae saying she's rooting for everybody black is not racist, one group is here to help you. White Nonsense Roundup. The volunteer-run Facebook group, founded last year by friends Layla Tromble and Terry Compton in Washington State, has white people respond to racist trolls online at the request of people of color. Okay, hold on. Let's just cut to the chase here and see an example of what these white knights do. Let's quote, shall we? No one is saying white people are born racist. Then scroll down a bit and we have, we need more white people to speak out, to hold other white people accountable to their innate racism, Aluma told HuffPost. So then I assume you have no idea what the word innate means, do you? Here, I'll help you out. Uh-oh, looks like you and the black woman aren't on the same page. So which one of you needs to educate the other? Give me another, Bob. This is just too stupid to bother with the rest of it. They can't even keep their own shit straight. How in the hell they plan on convincing other white people to share their guilt with babbling nonsense like this is beyond me. Nearly 1 in 5 undergrads support violence to shut down speakers. On The Story last night, former Representative Jason Chavetz, Republican Utah, and Richard Fowler discussed a new poll from the left-leaning Brookings Institution, which reported that 19% of undergraduate college students find violence to be an acceptable way to prevent controversial speech. Chavetz said that those preaching tolerance are actually the ones who are the least tolerant of anybody. He referenced Michelle Obama's call to go high when opponents go low. I haven't seen anybody on the left doing that, he said. You know what? I know there's a lot of people out there who are going to say they're not surprised by these numbers, but I am. I'm usually pessimistic, so I kind of expected it to be higher, actually. Now, the Fox story was rather short and focused on just that one stat, but if you follow the link they provided to the Brookings Institute page, this poll actually had much more in it than just that. Now, I'm not going to read you the entire thing, it's a bit lengthy, but I wanted to make a note of a couple of things anyway, because it's actually worse than it originally appears. For example, 44% do not think hate speech is protected by the First Amendment. 51% agree that it's right to shout down speakers you're opposed to. 62% think a university is required by law to present opposing views to any controversial speaker. And 53% are in favor of colleges prohibiting certain speech or viewpoints that they deem offensive to someone. As John conveniently summarized for us, the survey results establish with data what has been clear anecdotally to anyone who has been observing campus dynamics in recent years. Freedom of expression is deeply imperiled on U.S. campuses. In fact, despite protestations to the contrary, often with statements like, "We fully support the First Amendment, but," freedom of expression is clearly not, in practice, available on many campuses, including many public campuses that have First Amendment obligations. This is the real danger, folks. The tiny number of idiots running around in black masks beating people who disagree with them is easily dealt with. They're already breaking the law, so we don't need to do anything new or create new laws to deal with them. But clearly we need to change something within the university system itself if the majority of students support the suppression of free speech and free expression. Antifa is a sideshow. Free speech is the main event. All right, Bob, let's wrap this up with our weekly dose of toxic masculinity. Court sentences 2 Oklahoma women for allegedly beating a 5-year-old with a hammer. 2 women in Oklahoma were sentenced to 20 years in jail on Friday after reportedly beating a 5-year-old so badly that he suffered 2 strokes. A judge in Muscogee County sentenced Rachel Stevens, 29, and her partner Kayla Jones, 26, to 20 years behind bars on charges of felony child abuse by injury and child neglect, according to court records obtained by Tulsa World. The pair reportedly pled no contest to the charge in a plea deal agreement. According to a police affidavit, the 5-year-old, who is Stevens' son, was locked in a room, bound up, and had duct tape covering his eyes, Tulsa World reported. The boy reportedly told investigators that his mother and her girlfriend beat him with a belt. Police also claimed in the affidavit that Stevens hit her son's hand with a hammer and Jones kicked him so hard in the groin that it made him bleed. The police investigation began after the boy was taken to a medical clinic in December 2015 for reported seizures and lesions on his face, Tulsa World said. Because his condition was so serious, the boy was reportedly transferred to the hospital where doctors discovered that he had several broken bones and was malnourished, prompting them to call the police, the affidavit said. While in the doctor's care, he reportedly suffered 2 strokes due to trauma. Stevens and Jones were arrested and charged in January 2016, according to Tulsa World. According to reports, 2 other children lived in the couple's home as well, but police said neither one of them appeared to have been mistreated. I wonder why. I mean, they don't say here, so I can only speculate, but maybe because this 5-year-old was a toxic male? I mean, clearly they were just trying to beat that toxic behavior out of him, right? Straighten him out so he can be a loving, caring doormat for women for the rest of his life. They had to do something before that innate masculinity takes hold and he grows up to be a rapist, didn't they? Remember, folks, women are victims, men are oppressors, and feminism is just about equality. I'll see you all next time.